West Asia, as we brace for Israel's attack on Iran, as we talk about this still unfolding development of Yahya Sinwar's death and what it all means for the future, not just of this region, but geopolitically as a whole. And then we're going to talk with Associate Director of the Eisenhower Media Center, Matthew Ho. He will come on at about 3 o'clock Eastern. So we have a big show today. So everyone hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notifications bell. Hitting the like button helps boost this live stream in YouTube's algorithm. And without further ado, though, let us bring on Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson, returning back to the show. Thank you so much for coming back on again.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so let's get to this breaking development. Hamas hasn't necessarily confirmed that this is true. The Israeli Defense Forces, what some call the Israeli Occupation Forces, have supposedly verified that Yahya Sinwar, the top leader of Hamas, has been killed. The narrative is that he was killed while he was fighting actually alongside other resistance forces in Rafah. So I wanted to ask you, Colonel, because this is a strategy, or perhaps we can call it more of a policy of Israel, of decapitation. There's been, of course, Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah's assassination, numerous attempts to assassinate more Hezbollah leaders, including political leaders. And now we have Yahya Sinwar as the latest of these victims. But I wanted to ask you about this policy and what it says about where Israel really is, because on the one hand, you have Israel conducting these assassinations, and on the other, you have them also taking revenge out on civilians, but having trouble achieving stated goals. What do you make of this, and how do you see these assassinations in the broader context of what's happening in West Asia and what Israel and the United States backing it is doing?
Let me throw a little history out, if you don't mind. I won't be too long on it. The last time the United States did anything of this nature was the assassination of Admiral Yamamoto in World War II, the architect and indeed probably the genius behind the surprise attack on Pearl Harbor that brought the United States into World War II. There was a lot of talk. I'd be surprised, because it was after that attack had occurred, and the United States was fighting mad, furious, in a rage. There was still a lot of discussion about whether or not it was right, morally, ethically, rules of war, such as they were at that time, to assassinate a uniform-wearing, general in the enemy's camp. We did it. P-38 Lightnings intercepted his plane going to the Philippines, as I recall, shot it down and killed him. We didn't do any more. We contemplated doing others, including Hitler himself and some of his stooges, but we didn't do any more. And I think it's because that very discussion and the argument surrounding it really soured people on doing that sort of thing, not least of which is self-interest. Your enemy will do it back to you. And incidentally, that's what really worried me about when Donald Trump, president at the time, took out the leader and a member of the Iranian government, recognized by the UN state government of the IRGC, but he was also a member of the Iranian government. We assassinated him under some really dubious circumstances, too. He was actually on what could be called a sort of a peace mission, and he was in Iraq to boot. And we assassinated him and assassinated the leader of one of the militias in Iraq, too, that we didn't like. This is not a good thing. Basic point. This is not a good thing to do. And Israel has made a trade of it. That's what they do. They take out the heads of whomever they don't like. And I'm sure that they have taken some heads out that we didn't like either, and they've done it in secret. It's no different from what we accused Vladimir Putin of doing, for example, with his nuclear pellet or whatever, with the guy he didn't like who was in London at the time. This is a good practice for states, especially big states that say they believe in international humanitarian law and international law in general, including international criminal law, to be doing. It's very damaging. And Israel is the most damaging state on the face of the earth. Now, I hasten to add, they're doing so many other things that are bona fide war crimes and just unnatural almost. I watched a video the other day of a young man burning to death in a tent. He was on an IV drip, and he was burning to death, and you could see the IV drip on his arm. And he's burning to death. The Israelis have made a habit of attacking tents now because it kills a lot of people. Tent gets on fire and everybody in there is dead. So it's not something that, and here's the other thing about it. As a military professional, I don't think it works. It causes anger in the other camp, or camps in this case. It causes another person to be placed in charge, because nobody in this kind of struggle is without a second and a third and a fourth, and very good procedures for putting them in place, just like we have for our president. After 9/11, we went down to number 33 practicing. We went through the whole list, from the vice president to the speaker of the House to the secretary. I had to perform for the secretary of state because Colin Powell didn't want to participate. It was too wasteful of his time. But nonetheless, we went down the whole list all the way to 33 practicing what we do if we lost leadership. That's time consuming and very expensive. This is not something states should be engaging in, assassinating one another's leaders for whatever reason. There just isn't a reason, really. It doesn't improve the tactical, operational, or strategic situation. It often makes it worse. For example, when we got rid of bin Laden, Zawahiri was more bloodthirsty and probably smarter than bin Laden, operationally speaking. You put somebody else in. That's what you do. And you got a big newspaper headline for about 5 minutes, and that's about it. And Netanyahu, as I said, has made a practice of this. It's almost a trademark of him.
Yeah, and perhaps you could speak to what you believe are the effects of how this practice of assassination, decapitation, what kind of effects it's actually had in the here and now? Because you mentioned these horrific atrocities that are now extending into the UN area, where UN peacekeeping troops are being fired upon by Israel and threatened by Israel. But you also have the fact that Israel is engaged, and of course the U.S. backing it is engaged, as you called it, a struggle. They are engaging with Palestinian resistance, Hezbollah, all of these forces in the region that they are engaging in this decapitation. What effect do you believe it's actually had here? Has it moved things forward for them, or something else?